Yemen fired a ballistic missile at Israel yesterday morning, which somehow managed to evade American and Israeli countermissiles and exploded in an open field in central Israel. Miraculously, no one was injured in this attack. The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, vows revenge against the Houthis, saying that Yemen will pay a heavy price for this attack. The Prime Minister is also holding an urgent meeting tomorrow to discuss whether Jews and Christians should be allowed to pray on the Temple Mount. Guys, some crazy things have been happening on the Temple Mount recently, and I'm going to give you the full breakdown today on the show. Hold on to your seats. I'm Josiah, and this is the Israel Guys. Welcome to the Israel Guys, where we believe that in a world of Jew hatred and anti-Israel propaganda, you should have a direct connection to the land and people of Israel. Absolute miracle yesterday morning, about 6:30, sirens sounded in over 100 communities and towns across central Israel. Missile incoming to the area. The residents of the area heard loud explosions, some of which were counter missiles from the Iron Dome exploding, trying to take down this missile. Yemen, which is currently at war with Israel, the Houthi regime, fired a ballistic missile at Israel. According to the Houthis, the rebel group, the missile flew over 2,000 miles, which Yemen is over 2,000 miles away, in 11 and a half minutes to reach Israel, Israeli skies, and actually exploded in an open field in central Israel. Miraculous that it didn't hit a populated area, didn't hit buildings or houses where people are actually located, and no one was actually injured in this attack. Now, this ballistic missile had to have been supplied directly from Iran, because Yemen, as far as anybody knows, does not have the capabilities to build these kinds of weapons. This missile is presumed to have had a 650 kilogram warhead on it, and the crazy part is that it avoided detection by Israel's counter missiles program in place to prevent such weapons like this reaching Israeli skies, Israeli airspace. Now, Israel works alongside the U.S. And other countries to monitor launch sites in Yemen, so they're supposed to know when these missiles are take off and then be able to put their defense systems in place to take these missiles out of the air. There's also lots of radar from American and Israeli forces, the Israeli Navy in the Red Sea. Somehow this either evaded detection or somehow evaded the missiles that were launched to take them down. Once the missile reached Israeli airspace, Israel tried several times to take the missile down with the Iron Dome, and I believe they also used the Arrow system to take this missile down. Did not work for some reason, but thank God this missile crashed in an open field. It did not hit its target, which presumably was one of the major population areas in Israel center where this missile was headed. Absolute miracle that no one was injured. This missile could have caused huge amount of damage, and it could have cost the life of many, many innocent people. Ironically enough, the only damage caused from this attack was actually in a train station in Modi'in, where a piece of one of the interceptor missiles from Israel fell and causing structural damage to an escalator inside the train station. So we can thank God for protecting his people once again yesterday morning. Israel's prime minister has already vowed a response to this attack. Now, Bibi says that Yemen will pay a heavy price for this blatant attack against Israel from the Houthis. And just by the way, to refresh your memory, last time Israel heard from Yemen as far as attacks go was when the Houthis sent a suicide drone to Tel Aviv, which killed one Israeli man. And Israel responded by completely destroying the port, the Houthi port of Hodeidah, which looked just like this. Yeah, so that's what happens when Yemen messes with Israel. Israel responded very, very harshly, and hopefully, again, they will respond harshly, sending a clear message to this terror regime that they should not, indeed, mess with the Jewish state. Today, we're diving into a fascinating way to connect with the land of Israel like never before. You hear about Israel in the news all the time, but how much do you know about its geography and topography? Israel 365 presents the incredible 3D maps of modern and biblical Israel. These raised relief maps are detailed, showing every road, city, river, mountain, and valley. Imagine tracing your fingers from Mount Hermon to the Red Sea, feeling the terrain that's been central to so many biblical stories. The 3D map of the biblical Israel is a game changer for anyone serious about Bible study. It brings the topography of biblical times to life, showcasing where King David wandered, where he penned psalms, where he fought battles. It's like a visual encyclopedia of the Bible, helping you appreciate the historical and spiritual context of its events. These make a meaningful gift for any occasion and are perfect for community centers, libraries, classrooms, churches, and homes. Whether you're an educator or a student or just someone passionate about the Holy Land, these maps will deepen your understanding and appreciation of Israel's rich heritage. Don't miss out on this opportunity to experience the land of Israel. Click the link in the description below to get your own copy of the 3D maps of modern and biblical Israel. I want to fill you guys in on what has been happening on the Temple Mount recently. And before I do that, a report came out yesterday on Sunday that the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, will hold an urgent meeting with several ministers and the defense establishment on Tuesday regarding the status quo of the Temple Mount. And presumably this is to discuss the status quo of the Temple Mount before the upcoming Jewish holidays. Now, you may not know this, but for the past several weeks, Jews and Christians have been able to pray up on the Temple Mount, and albeit limitedly. They've been allowed to move their lips, and they've been allowed to say prayers out loud on the Temple Mount. Now, back in August, the National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir made a statement on the radio, and I believe he actually might have said this on the Temple Mount as well, stating that his policy was to allow prayer on the Temple Mount, to allow prayer equally for Jews and Muslims. Now, our group of Christian volunteers that was just here in Israel also ascended the Temple Mount just last week, and I can say with certainty that there is an equal law not just for Jews and Muslims, but also for Christians to be able to pray on the Temple Mount. Previously, that was not allowed. Jews were not allowed to pray on the Temple Mount, and Christians were not allowed to pray on the Temple Mount. Now, back in August, the U.S. State Department immediately jumped on Itamar Ben-Gvir's statement, sharply criticizing him, saying Ben-Gvir's ongoing reckless statements and actions of this minister only sow chaos and exacerbate tensions at a moment when Israel must stand united against threats from Iran and its proxy terrorist groups, including Hamas and Hezbollah. They directly undermine Israel's security. So, in a roundabout way, not even a roundabout, you can see clearly through this, the State Department is declaring that by allowing Jews and Christians to pray on the Temple Mount, it directly undermines Israel's security. Well, I just wanted to tell you guys and fill you guys in that since this happened back in August, and it's been happening ever since, which thankfully there hasn't been too much media coverage because the international community would have swarmed down on Israel for this supposedly change in the status quo. Since this happened back in August, there have been no riots, no unrest on the Temple Mount, as far as I have heard, and I've been keeping a very close eye on the news. Nothing that has caused major unrest. The Arabs have not violently rioted up there. Jews have not violently rioted up on the Temple Mount, simply minding their own business, visiting the Temple Mount in the very strict and few hours that they're allowed to ascend the Temple Mount, and quietly praying while they're up there on the Temple Mount. Now, for me, I find it kind of weird to even be trying to make an argument that Jews and Christians should be allowed to pray on the Temple Mount. This is the place where God's presence literally rested in the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. And Jews and Christians shouldn't be allowed to pray there. That just sounds insane to me. So Netanyahu is holding this urgent meeting tomorrow, because the defense establishment is warning of a significant escalation of unrest and violence during the upcoming Jewish holidays. They also warn that harming the, quote, status quo could lead to a rise in terror attacks by Iran, Hamas, and Hezbollah. Now, if you think about this for a second, this really makes no sense, seeing that the status quo that all these people cling to, like some unhealthy habits that they can't get rid of, the clinging to the status quo, you got to stay to the status quo, has not led to a decrease in terror attacks in the recent years, in the past 10, 20 years. They're saying that if we deviate from the status quo now and allow Jews and Christians to pray on the Temple Mount, it's going to lead to a rise in terror attacks. Let me tell you, there have been terror attacks the past many years inside of Israel, inside of Judea and Samaria, in Jerusalem, when the status quo was only to allow Muslims to pray on the Temple Mount. Makes absolutely no sense that there's going to all of a sudden be a sharp rise in terrorism because Jews and Christians are now going to be able to pray up there on the Temple Mount. Also, I don't know if everybody realized, but Israel is at full-scale war with Hamas, Hezbollah, and basically Iran, also Yemen. So how could there be a rise in terror attacks by these terror organizations when they're already committing terrorist attacks left and right now as we speak? And Israel is at full-scale war with them. How could there be more violence than they are already committing against the Jewish state right now? Also, another thing I wanted to point out is that the term status quo is such an idiotic idea in and of itself, if you really think about it. Now, the definition of status quo, Merriam-Webster's dictionary, the definition of status quo is the existing state of affairs. So the fact that the world leaders demand changing the status quo will cause major problems is just crazy. Oh, if we change the existing state of affairs on the Temple Mount, that's going to cause major world problems. Let me tell you something. Actually, argument could be made that right now the status quo on the Temple Mount is that Jews and Christians are also allowed to pray alongside the Muslims. Why? For the past month, Jews and Christians have been praying alongside the Muslims on the Temple Mount. That is the existing state of affairs right now on the Temple Mount. So any deviation for that would actually be upturning the status quo. Guys, let's pray that the result of this meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu, we can pray that God will give the leaders of Israel wisdom and the strength to allow Jews not to be just restricted against praying on the Temple Mount, and that the result of this meeting will be more freedom for everyone who ascends the Temple Mount, both for Jews and Christians, because we all know that caving into the Islamic agenda is not the way to achieve peace in any place of the world, especially on the Temple Mount, which is the most hotly contested piece of real estate in the world right now. The Temple Mount, caving to the Islamics is not a way to achieve peace. Also creating an apartheid state, which is currently the status quo. Only Muslims are allowed to pray. That is not at all the way to achieve peace in Jerusalem, the holy city. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Continue to pray for the nation of Israel, and let's continue to fight for the freedom of Jews and Christians to be able to pray on the Temple Mount. Why? Because it's the holiest site in the Bible. The Temple Mount, the temple is literally the holiest place in the Bible, and I believe that everybody should be able to worship God there on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Guys, thank you so much for watching today. Don't forget to check out the map of Israel from Israel 365. The link is down in the description below. As always, stop listening to the lies and propaganda and connect with the truth of what is happening here in Israel. We'll be back soon here at the Israel Guys.